Okay, well, good evening. Sorry for a little bit of a delay. Had to fix a couple things, and let's get ready to go. But let's open in prayer, and then we'll jump into our study. Heavenly Father, we thank you as always. You are perfect, you are holy, you are glorious in every way. Your word is perfect, Lord, and we recognize that it is our duty to you, Lord God, and our love and care for who you are to study your word and to look at every aspect of Scripture we want to know and be trained by the whole counsel of your word. And that includes the Song of Songs, Lord God. I pray that it would be a blessing to us as we study. We would learn and know what you intend for us to learn and grow in, and that wherever application does in fact apply, we will recognize how to do that very thing, Lord God. So we thank you for this opportunity to study once again, lesson number 2 in Song of Songs. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, we are continuing in this study, and it is, I had a lot of fun last week. It's a good study, I'm certain. So we'll have more tonight, and we'll have, but we won't get to the wedding itself, and we'll talk about that. That'll be our most uncomfortable discussion of all, but we'll still end up trying to gain from it and talk about things in a way that certainly we shouldn't be ashamed of what God's not ashamed of in terms of relaying the information that happens in a wedding and even on a wedding night. So we will engage in that. Tonight we don't have a whole lot of controversy. There's just 2 references to breasts, and so we'll talk about those as we go. But next week will be the most uncomfortable, but join us for that nevertheless, and we'll keep going on through. So this is the continuation of chapter 1 and then into chapter 2 and the first part of chapter 3. We're going to call it the Courtship Part 2. We looked at the Courtship Part 1 section last week. It was beautiful. You could see the love that, and remember we have the Shulamite, who is the bride. That's only mentioned once in the whole song, what they call her, the Shulamite. But it becomes very common, and if you're New King James like I am, and you have your section headings that sort of break up the chapter into who's speaking to who, it often refers to her as the Shulamite, so I'm sticking with that language, the Shulamite, the beloved of the king. And so we saw the love that she had for Solomon the king. We saw in return the love that Solomon had for her. And remember, there was this longing in her heart and this desire to even see him. And I'll recount just quickly the Jewish wedding. You know, the basic structure of the Jewish wedding is there's this, betrothal period. There's an agreement that's made sometimes by the parents, sometimes by the parties themselves, that this man and this woman will become husband and wife. And but then that starts a betrothal period where they know they're going to get married, and it seems to be, certainly from the New Testament with Joseph and Mary and all that, seems to be legally binding. You can't just go, I changed my mind, I'm walking away from this thing. No, there was commitments and obligations and even an exchange of currencies for a dowry and things like that may have taken place that makes this a legal agreement that the parties are engaged in. But so that starts off the process. Then, as we kind of know from tradition, the groom-to-be or the bridegroom will go back to his father's land, his father's property, and he will make sure that he is properly adding a house or a place of residence for he and his wife to live in. And he doesn't start that until the betrothal period begins. Then he begins working on that. And of course, the bride is waiting, and she's kind of given instructions to be always ready, be always watching. Your bridegroom will come, and you don't know. He's not going to tell you in advance. And in fact, it's very, from a ceremony perspective, it's considered, part of the excitement is, be ready tonight. He might come tonight. Oh, he's not ready tonight, but we'll be ready tomorrow night. He might come tomorrow night. And you just keep yourself ready in anticipation, and he will come. And then he comes, oftentimes, I've heard it described, in the middle of the night. So you're supposed to be sleeping and yet still ready and waiting for the bridegroom to show up. And we'll see some images of that tonight. We'll talk about whether they're real or a vision or a dream that the Shulamite is having, but that's kind of the procedure. So then he comes, takes his, comes by secret, takes his bride. She and, of course, any of the wedding party travel back to the place where he is prepared at his father's house. They consummate the marriage, and then begins the celebration of their marriage. And as you saw in John chapter 2, the wedding at Cana, you see that there was like this week-long celebration of the wedding ceremony. So it was going on for days rather than just what we might do, like a wedding reception for a few hours on a Saturday evening or whatever the occasion calls for. So that's what we saw, kind of that setup of all of that. She's waiting. She loves her bride or groomsman to be, or groom to be, and he loves her, and they've been now waiting in the separation period for a while. It's not entirely clear, how much of that, and part of that wedding tradition was also that, of course, they maintained separation. They were not to be together. There wasn't like we're still betrothed to one another, and so we're going to, see each other on evenings and weekends, and then we both go our separate ways. I mean, that may be things that happen, but as far as the traditional wedding was concerned, she knew that he was absent and had to be ready for his expected but unpredictable return. All right, so now the second part of chapter 1, or the courtship period part 2, we're going to take a look at this. And I'm going to read through from chapter 1, verse 12, through chapter 2, verse 7, I believe. And we're going to read that section. This is all part of the same kind of courtship section. We'll talk about that, and then go on to the next one. Now, the notes are going to be broken up into kind of who's speaking to who, what little section we're going through. But I don't want to keep going back and forth for like text and break up the text and all of that. So we're going to take bigger chunks and then try to unpack who's speaking and what are they trying to convey in the conversation. All right. So with all that as kind of a setup, let's turn to Solomon, Song of Solomon or Song of Songs, chapter 1, verse 12. So, while the king is at his table, my spikenard sends forth its fragrance. A bundle of myrrh is my beloved to me. All that lies all night between my breasts, my beloved is to me a cluster of henna blooms in the vineyards of En-gedi. Behold, you are fair, my love. Behold, you are fair. You have dove's eyes. Behold, you are handsome, my beloved. Yes, pleasant. Also, our bed is green. The beams of our houses are cedar, and the rafters of fir. I am the rose of Sharon, and the lily of the valleys. Like a lily among thorns, so is my love among the daughters. Like an apple tree among the trees of the woods, so is my beloved among the sons. I sat down in his shade with great delight, and his fruit was sweet to my taste. He brought me to the banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. Sustain me with cakes of raisins, refresh me with apples, for I am lovesick. His left hand is under my head, and his right hand embraces me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. Well, unless you're specially trained and good at this, you probably didn't fully pick up who's speaking when and where the transitions were and what's happening there. We'll try to cover that as best we can, stepping, or adding some structure where the text itself doesn't break it up in that particular way. Okay, so what we're seeing here in this section from chapter 1, verse 12 through chapter 2, verse 7, is kind of a courtship dining experience that may have been remembered by the beloved. It could have been before they got engaged, could have been during the betrothal period, or this could be a hope or an expectancy by the Shulamite, something that actually hasn't happened. And we talked last week, some people believe this is all allegory. None of these events were actually true or, actually happened. I don't hold that view. I think this is what's recorded, in the actual scenes are the actual words and the actual events that are taking place. But this, even though I hold to a literal view that that this is truly Solomon and truly this Shulamite bride, and they truly are in courtship period, it could be that she's fantasizing. It could be that she's dreaming or kind of planning things out, like a bride is kind of planning out her wedding day. And some of us do that on big events or big occasions. We kind of plan and kind of, on this day we'll do this, and we'll go to dinner here, and we'll go do, if you're going on vacation or something like that, right? You might kind of plan those things out, and you write it down, even though it's not actually something that's happened yet. That, to me, seems like that's what's happening here. But again, it could be something that happened, prior to or within the courtship period, or it could be her dreaming and fantasizing, if you will, about what's coming. Either way, let's kind of walk through what's happening here. She looks upon the king as she sits down for dinner at his table or his couch. The word is kind of synonymous there. It could also be bed, couch, table. All seem to fit in that same Hebrew word structure there. So we'll say table or couch at this point. And the Shulamite beloved, that's the bride, wears, or of course again if she's fantasizing here, plans to wear spikenard because of its beautiful fragrance that it gives off. Now spikenard is a very costly ointment imported from India, extracted from the Himalayan plant there found in India. So this would be a very expensive ointment for her to have possession of in Israel, given it comes from India and it's a very, expensive process for her to acquire. So it would be a significant financial cost to a woman who seems to be of poor status. Remember we talked about last week, she talks about how her skin is darkened from the sun. She's always working in the vineyards. She doesn't be seeming to live a life of luxury and lots of wealth under her, control. So it would be a very significant expense if she actually is wearing spikenard for this dinner occasion that they're having. But it could have been possibly a gift from Solomon. Solomon's got lots of financial resources, so he may have given it to her directly, or he may have sent it by the hands of a delivery courier or something to give her the spikenard in anticipation of when they come together. But it's also, that's one possibility, given its expense. It's also possible that it's included here because she spent everything she had to make sure she got the best spikenard, best smelling perfume, we might call it, for her big occasion with her upcoming husband. So you can take some license and picks of what seems to be fit best for you. I would say we have access to it. We don't know how she got it. I might lean towards Solomon giving it to her as a gift more so than the other scenarios, but anybody knows. Yeah, Maureen. Yeah, every translation is going to, it's actually, I believe the Hebrew word itself is nard. And so every translator is going to come up with some equivalency to help us understand in English what might be the object that we're talking about. Okay, but I think it's generally, the commentators generally affirm that it's this fragrance that comes out of the Himalayan plants that are in India. So the Shulamite beloved went all out, if you will, for her courtship and this dining encounter during their betrothal period, whatever it may be, with the king, because to her, she says, the king is a bundle of myrrh. He's a bundle of myrrh to me. So in other words, and that's also a good smelling, perfume or something that gives off a nice aroma. So she's like, I have to smell good because I know my beloved king is going to come to me and he will smell good. He was willing to put on something that smells nice for me. I've had to put on something that smells nice for him. Maybe in our culture we might go, well, I have to take a shower, Now I realize some men and some women certainly wear perfumes and things that smell good, but in that culture, when you don't have the same kind of hygiene that we have access to in 21st century America with showers and soap and all those things that sort of just take us down to neutral, hopefully. She's somebody who labors in the vineyard. She feels like she got to have something to mask anything that would be unpleasant for her soon-to-be husband that he might smell. Okay, and additionally, it was customary for the woman to wear a pouch full of myrrh as a necklace, as a way of providing just this continuing aromatic, I should say, pleasure to the partner. All right, so she wears this because it's going to wear off. But if she keeps kind of a baggie or a pouch full of it down around, as a necklace around her neck, then it's going to have more staying power, more lasting power. He can't tell if what he smells is coming from the pouch or coming from her skin. She's just, she's going to wear it. So it was customary because of, again, things could smell in the desert, heat of the desert. She's going to wear that to, again, just try to make the occasion as best for her partner, her future spouse, as she can. Now, the imagery here suggests that the king's pleasant aroma was pleasing to the Shulamite as she pictured his abiding presence then hanging between her breasts all night. Okay, so that's where you get that first breasts reference there. So she's gone all out and gotten spikenard, or she's willing to take with the spikenard that he's provided for her. And that's not what she's talking about here. She's saying, you, my beloved, my king, my beloved king, you are, while I smell good because of spikenard, you are tender and sweet smelling to me because you're like a pouch of myrrh hanging between my breasts. And so she's like, I don't need that. I don't need the pouch of myrrh. I need you to lay your head on my chest. Okay. So then she continues on by comparing her beloved to a cluster of henna blooms in the vineyards of En-Gedi. And I probably I looked for a couple of them and didn't find anything that I was super impressed with, but I'll tell you about En-Gedi here in a second. But henna is present throughout all of Israel, and it serves as a metaphor. Here she's using it as a metaphor for all the men of Israel, which would include, of course, her beloved king. I should say beloved, not believer. Her beloved king. However, her beloved is no ordinary henna bloom, for he is a beautiful bloom in the oasis that is known as En-Gedi. Now, David fled to En-Gedi on at least one occasion that I recall, maybe twice. It's like an oasis, truly an oasis, and it still is today, an oasis in the midst of Israel. So, you have all this kind of arid, very desert kind of landscaping and things like that. But the region of En-Gedi is considered to be an oasis. And so she's saying, when I look across all of Israel and I see all these available men who might want me as their wife, or I could choose, in a sense, as my husband, I see you and as a man, yes, but a man who blooms in the oasis of En-Gedi. Okay, so she's putting him on a very high pedestal in terms of what she thinks of him and her desires to come together with him. So all of the Shulamite's desires and appreciation are only or exclusively for her beloved, who is set apart from all other men in the country. She's just basically committing herself to him and saying, I don't have eyes or desire for any other man. It's only for you, my king. The beloved king, I believe, starting in verse 15 of chapter 1, responds back to his betrothed bride. Now, this again could be her dreaming and fantasizing, or it could be the actual conversation that took place. Again, we don't know. If I didn't say it already, I lean more towards her being kind of having a fantasy about their future encounter more so, but it could be either way. So if that's the case, she's putting words in his mouth, if you will, as she dreams or fantasizes, or it's a real story and these are his actual words. I don't know either way. So he responds and he declares that his Shulamite bride-to-be is fair, meaning beautiful, and he loves her passionately. Okay, so he's expressing a passionate love for her in the same way she has expressed love for him. And he repeats the praise of her beauty, that she is set apart from all the other virgins in his eyes. So, yeah, she knows there's other men. He knows there's other women, but she has committed herself exclusively to thinking about him, and not just marrying him, but not looking at another man as like, well, here's an opportunity that I could have had and I didn't choose it, but he's still kind of nice to look at or desire to be with. She's like, I cut all that off. You're the only one I desire in every aspect of this desiring. And he's returning the same conduct and saying, I desire you, and I desire you exclusively. Further, her eyes are like, he compares them, we mentioned this last week, there's always going to be an animal comparison. Whether you like being compared to an animal if you're a woman or a man, it's, up to you. But that's sort of the love language poetry that's very common for this era. And so he's going to compare her eyes to those like a dove, meaning, and it's indicating that she has eyes that are clean and beautiful, and they cause tranquility to invade his spirit. Like, I look at my beloved Shulamite, and my spirit is just set in a whole different place than when I'm with anyone else or if I'm alone. Okay, so picking up in verse 16, carrying through to chapter 2, verse 1, she then responds back to him as their loving communication with each other continues. Again, fantasized or real is your choice. She declares that her beloved is handsome and pleasant for her to look upon. So the compliments just keep going between these two, right? They keep elevating their compliments one to another. She then describes their bed, as I said, like a couch, or the couch of their bed, their couch, their table, whatever it may be, as green, or in a place of comfort and safety for her. And it's a place for both of them to enjoy one another, or certainly to be in anticipation of enjoying one another's intimate company one with another. Then she further describes the house in anticipation, I believe, of the time they will live there together. So if this is the courtship, and if she hasn't seen what the house that Solomon is building for her, that leads me to think that this is much more about fantasy or, envisioning what's going on than her talking about the house that she's never seen. And he didn't send her Instagram pictures or whatever of the house, right? So that's one of the clues to me that she's actually engaged in, planning and wishful thinking and fantasy more than actually talking about a real event or a real house at this point. But she trusts and believes, or hopes at least, that their house has or will have beams of cedar, representing a beautiful place to live. And I believe also the cedar beams are representing the permanency of their marriage vows. We're not living in a tent. We're not nomads and wandering. Our marriage is not like that. We are going to dwell in a house that is planted with foundations and beams of cedar, right? And then timbers for the structure above with a fir. And so she's envisioning permanency in their relationship and speaking of it. So as I said, the rafters for the roof are made of fir, and which adds more beauty to the house that she's planning to live in. And it's showing that the immense care that is being used to go into their life that's coming together. Yeah. Why green for the bed? I haven't come across any of that. I would say it most likely represents a growing and flourishing, life together. Okay, so I think it has to do with, we associate green with things that are living and healthy and alive. So. Lack of experience. Yeah, so you're green. Yeah. It could be, and that could also be, we haven't been together yet, and we might, our bed will be green on our first day. That's an idiom I haven't thought to consider. I don't know how far back it goes, but it could be. So. Okay, then she, a kind of a name or a title you might have heard before. I'm not sure if you could identify where it came from, but she identifies herself or declares herself to be the Rose of Sharon. and the lily of the valleys. So what she's doing here, and now a rose is kind of an ordinary flower. I mean, it's beautiful, but it's not like there's only one in a lifetime, right? And the lilies, of course, have plenty of lilies are out there. So she's returning to this idea. I'm just another woman. I love that my beloved loves me, but I'm like a rose or a lily. And there's lots of beautiful virgins in the kingdom. So she describes two ordinary flowers that the king has chosen for his special purposes, right? Like it's not just that she's a rose or a lily, it's that he's chosen her as the rose and the lily that he wants to be with. So, but it is a kind of a statement of some humility. She does not consider herself to be extraordinarily beautiful among the other virgins that she might be comparing herself to, but it's not her opinion of her beauty that matters. It's Solomon's opinion of her beauty that matters. And he has, so far in these first two chapters, repeatedly, confidently communicated to her that he considers her to be the height, the top. She's the only one he considers to be as beautiful as she is. So then the beloved king, in verse 2 of chapter 2, responds back to the Shulamite and her humility concerning her appearance, right? So to the king, he responds back. Again, this could be imaginary, envisioned, or it can be real. But the king declares that she is a wonderful lily among thorns. Like, no, you're not just a lily among lilies. You're a lily among thorns, okay? Like he's elevating her much out of this. Stop comparing yourself to all the other virgins. They're thorns. You're a lily in comparison. Okay? And the Shulamite stands out in her beauty among all the daughters of Israel. So he's trying to convey to her, you have nothing to worry about. There is no one to compare you to because you stand above and higher than in beauty all the other women that I see. And then the Shulamite responds with a similar praise back for the beloved king in chapter 2, verse 3. She describes the king like an apple tree among the less desirable trees in the woods. So you see these effusive compliments keep going and going and going during this courtship period. So she's not just a lily, she's a lily among thorns. He's not just a tree, he's like an apple tree among far less desirable trees that you might find in the woods, right? So he's a special tree to her. She's a special lily to him. So, and she also declares as a Shulamite that she only has eyes for her beloved among the sons of Israel. So again, they're declaring themselves to be exclusively in love with each other and each other alone. Then she promises to sit under the only shade, the loving protection that he will provide for her. So first she describes him as a tree, right? And one of the benefits of a tree in the desert is it gives you shade. And she's saying, I don't want shade from any other tree. I only want shade that comes from you. Okay, so again, more symbolism and imagery that she is communicating. I won't go sit under any other tree just because it's convenient or because I'm hot and I need shade. I'll only find my shade, my rest, my trust in you, King Solomon. Okay. And describing him as an apple tree, she knows that his fruit will be sweet and satisfying, which no other tree, therefore meaning no other man, can offer to her. You might be getting sappily, sickly sweet of all this back and forth, right? But they're in this courtship period, and they're waiting for each other, and they just keep giving reassurances. Yes, it's been weeks. Yes, it's been months, but we're still coming together as husband and wife on the wedding day that's approaching, and you don't have to worry about me, and I don't have to worry about you as we approach this day. Okay, the Shulamite beloved now addresses what we call the daughters of Jerusalem. She's speaking to her friends here, right? Now, that's so this conversation, again, real or imagined, for the Shulamite, is now turning to the daughters of Jerusalem, which again seems to indicate to me how quickly the conversation changes from person to person. This probably isn't like them, intimately sitting on his couch or whatever, having this conversation, because why are the daughters there, or her friends there? Probably more of a fantastical kind of a description of what's happening here. So she knows, speaking to the daughters of Jerusalem, she knows that their wedding does in fact draw near, and she speaks, of course, in anticipation of their being able to come together in his house, this house of cedar and timber, or cedar, or rafters of fir and all that. He brought her, or will bring her, into the banqueting house in a celebration of their wedding day. Now, the wedding begins to take place in chapter 3, and so this is another indication to me that this hasn't happened yet. They're not married yet, so why would she be brought into the wedding, or the house with the wedding and the banquet for the wedding, if it hasn't occurred yet? So it could be also out of sequence. I just think it's probably a fantasy of the bride as she's preparing for her wedding day. All right. He will set his banner, or she knows, she's telling her friends, the king will set his banner over her as his wife. I believe the banner represents protection, right? So when Israel was gathering together and ready to go to battle, they would come together under one of the banners so that they could go out in force together in unity to go fight. And so you don't go fight alone, you come under the banner, and then in going out under the same banner, one with another, then you are in a safer position. So she's talking about being under his protection as husband, but also as king. But I believe it's also giving her a new identity. We don't, in this day and age, they didn't necessarily take the person's last name because they didn't necessarily have a last name, right? Last names kind of came along later. Jesus of Nazareth. His last name wasn't Nazareth. It wasn't Christ. It's just, who do you hail from, or where do you hail from? Joseph, son of, Jesus, son of Joseph, or David, son, of Jesse. Or Jesus of Nazareth, where did you come from? But she's talking about taking his identity in the same way, my wife would change her name shortly after our wedding from her last name to my last name. I think that's what she's telling the daughters. I can't wait to take my husband's identity. Since the day has not yet arrived, as discussed here, she asked her friends to sustain her with cakes of raisins and apples. I think that seems to indicate she's kind of growing weary. This waiting for the wedding day to come is making her, famished. And she's saying, well, in whether that's real or, figurative here, she's asking them to help sustain her until the wedding day. Okay. And I think some of our thought process would do the same thing. If you're a bride and you've got bridesmaids and best friends, and you're like, I can't believe I have to wait a whole another 2 weeks for our wedding day. I don't know how I'm going to make it. And they come around. We'll help you get there. We'll help keep your emotions in check. We'll help make sure things are ready. You can do this. You can wait the 2 weeks or whatever it is. We'll get you to the wedding day. So she's asking them, I'm struggling here. Will you help sustain me to get through to the wedding day? And she, again, either figuratively or expressly is saying, sustain me with cakes of raisins and apples. So, and she's describing herself, the Shulamite, is lovesick and finds it hard to continue waiting for the day to come. In fact, she doesn't see how she'll be able to endure this wait unless her friends will physically and emotionally help her get to the day that she's been dreaming of and planning for and fantasizing of here for some period of time. So she once again, I believe, fantasizes about their upcoming intimacy and describes her beloved, King Solomon, placing his hand under her head and embracing her with his passionate love for her. And again, I'm going to reiterate, I don't think this is what happened. I think this is what she's fantasizing of having happening. I think they maintained a beautiful level of purity and intimacy, and given their extreme attraction for one another, I don't think it would be all that advised for them to come together and him to put his hand under her head and embrace her and all such things. Seems like that's probably more of her wishful thinking about their wedding day than an actual description of what happened. So then the Shulamite, she's going to do this twice. The Shulamite then cautions the daughters of Jerusalem not to stir up love or awaken love until it pleases, right? So she's like, oh, I've made a big mistake. Is that what I said here? So her struggles could have been avoided if she had been more protective of her thoughts and her desires, knowing that courtship will take some time. I don't know how long, let's say 6 months. Let's just say she's going to wait 6 months from betrothal to wedding day. And she sort of ran too fast, thought too fantastically about how beautiful this is going to be too early. And now she's like, I just want to get there, right? She's like, daughters, friends, don't stir up these thoughts and desires and for love until that you can actually see it fulfilled. All it's doing is wrecking me. It's making me, I'm struggling with my emotions. I'm struggling with, maybe having trouble sleeping, and all such things are challenging her. Yes, okay, we made a decision to get married, but fantasizing about how beautiful and attractive he is and how much I want him to put his hand under my head and smell his wonderful aroma that he's prepared for me, I've just kind of crossed into a new area that I can't seem to control, and I wish I hadn't gone there in the first place. I think that's what she's saying. Okay, daughters, don't stir up love until it's time to let the love be stirred up. Okay, so that takes us to chapter 2, verse 8, and we'll read through the rest of our section tonight, into chapter 3, verse 5. So let's read that section. Again, it'll be somewhat challenging, just without the section headings and whatnot, to know who's speaking to when or whatever, but let's read it, and then we'll try to break it down in the same way we just did. So, Song of Songs, chapter 2, verse 8. The voice of my beloved, behold, he comes leaping upon the mountains, skipping upon the hills. My beloved is like a gazelle or a young stag. Behold, he stands behind our wall. He is looking through the windows, gazing through the lattice. My beloved spoke, and he said to me, Rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing has come, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The fig tree puts forth her green figs, and the vines with the tender grapes, and give a good smell. Rise up, my love, my fair one, come away. O my dove, in the clefts of the rocks, in the secret places of the cliff, let me see your face. Let me hear your voice, for your voice is sweet and your face is lovely. Catch us the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes. My beloved is mine, and I am his. He feeds his flocks among the lilies. Until the day breaks and the shadows flee away, turn, my beloved, be like a gazelle or a young stag upon the mountains of Bether. By night, on my bed, I sought the one I love. I sought him, but I did not find him. I will rise now, I said, and go about the city in the streets and in the squares, and I will seek the one I love. I sought him, but I did not find him. The watchmen who go out of the city found me and I said, Have you seen the one I love? Scarcely I had passed by them when I found the one I love. I held him, and I would not let him go until he had brought me into the house of my mother and into the chamber of her who conceived me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles or by the does of the field, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. Okay. All right, again, hard to kind of figure out exactly when transitions happen of who's speaking to who to when. Let's see if we can bring some clarity. Okay, So this is the beloved king's arrival. Now, once again, we're going to struggle with a little bit of the poetry here to understand, are we talking about real events yet, or are we talking about more fantasy continuing, or a dream? This whole thing could be a dream. I lean more towards it being a dream based on the second half of that section that we read. It seems like it doesn't comport with the reality of him coming to get his bride and take her home. None of that seems to fit. You'll see that next week in chapter 3 and 4. Okay, so this description of courtship before the wedding, but it is a description of the courtship that's taking place before the wedding day arrives. So it could either be a real event or a fantasy again, as I said. But in this account, the Shulamite first hears the voice of her beloved king from a distance. Is that the voice of my beloved? Do I hear him coming? Is he coming? I've been waiting. Is that him? Do I hear his voice in the distance? The king's greatly anticipated arrival is described as his coming to her in the way that follows. Now, this is, again, why it seems awfully fantastical. Now, she's using poetic language here, but again, she's talking about him coming leaping on the mountains or from mountaintop to mountaintop. He's coming across these mountains to get his bride. Kind of picture it, right? Like he's not a superhero. He doesn't, cross tall mountains with a single bound and a cape on his back, but she's describing him as hitting a mountaintop and then hitting a mountaintop. Here he comes. He's coming to get me. He's leaping from mountaintop to mountaintop. Oh, what a beautiful picture of my bridegroom coming to take me as his bride. She describes him as skipping upon the hills, which is just another poetic parallelism. You know that from poetry. Sometimes you say something once, and then you say the same thing again, just slightly differently. So he's coming in this, almost like superhero kind of way, coming to get her. She describes his movement as being powerful and graceful, like a gazelle or a young stag, like a male deer. And most of us have seen some pretty acrobatic kind of leaps and bounds of what a male deer can do. And so she's describing him like this incredibly beautiful, graceful, flowing movements that are seemingly effort but cover incredible territory or ground with very little effort, is I think the picture that she's painting for us here. When the king then arrives after doing this mountaintop skipping, when the king arrives at the home of the Shulamite's parents, she describes him as first standing behind their wall, preparing to make an entrance. He doesn't just walk up the front walkway, knock on the door, and say, "Hey, I'm here for my bride." Right? She's describing something more dramatic, more intense that she's going to try and picture as he makes his arrival. So she first comes to the fence or the wall that's keeping him away from her and her from him. But then she describes him as gazing through the lattice into the windows, plural, of her home, her parents' home. So he seems to be looking for her. So in this description, his desire seems to be to identify the location in the house where she is so that he can carry her away without waking up the whole house or having to go through a gauntlet of people to get to his bride. He's standing back at the outer area of the house. He's looking through the lattice. Maybe it's a little bit of, kind of trying to peek through and see, hopefully not being detected by anybody in the house. And I think he's looking. Is she in that window? No. Is she in that window? No. Oh, she's in that window, right? That's where I'm going to go get my bride. So I think the picture here is he doesn't intend to, as I said, knock on the door and have someone else, "Hey, Solomon's here." He wants her first image or thought that he's actually there to be when she appears in her room to take her away. Okay, and so she doesn't want anyone else kind of telegraphing his arrival to her or in any way. Oh, the house is all abuzz because he just showed up or he's walking down the walkway to our house. Okay, and I believe this is very much similar to what I pictured the harpazo, the rapture of the church, looking like when Christ returns for his bride. He's not lurking on the outside, looking around through lattices, but it's going to be like he's not going to come through any other source. He's coming for his church. And so it's just the bride. He's not going to go through the leaders of Israel. He's not going to go through the UN or the President of the United States and say, hey, I'm here. Just want you to let you know I'm going to start taking this world over right now. And he's going to come and snatch his bride away. And the bride has no idea until the snatching is ready to take place that it's actually upon her. And so there's, to me, the picture here that she's describing seems to be very consistent with my perhaps tainted or slanted view of the rapture that we see in the New Testament. While she describes the king's actions outside her home as if she knew what he was doing, the scene then suddenly switches to the king unexpectedly standing beside her bed and calling to her. Right? So yeah, it's like in one sense, she's like in a third person. She's looking at him, looking, waiting to kind of make his secretive arrival. But then the next picture, the next scene that she describes is, he's right here. I didn't know he was here. And suddenly he's right here calling to her from while she's in her bed. And in doing so, the king requests for his bride to rise up. And he lovingly calls her his love, rise up, my love, right? And his fair, meaning his beautiful one, rise up, my fair, my beautiful one. I'm here to take you for our wedding day. He then requests that she come away with him to join him in their marriage at the home that he has prepared for her. So that's the first thing she's aware of. She's been waiting weeks, months, probably not years or whatever, but she's been waiting for some extended period of time. And suddenly he's there, and suddenly he's saying, rise up, my love, my beautiful one. I'm ready to take you to my house that I prepared for us to live in as a couple. And one of the reasons why he's saying that it's time for the wedding in this particular occasion is that he's describing many factors that describe it as being springtime. Okay, so in this envisioned wedding that's going to take place, it happens in the spring. How do we know that? Well, first thing he says is, whoa, winter has passed. So what comes after winter? Springtime, right? The rainy season has come to an end. So those latter rains at the end of the winter season have ended. He talks about the starkness of winter has now been transformed into beauty by the appearance of spring flowers that have begun to repopulate the earth. So you see all of these different descriptions and pictures of springtime arising in Israel when he wants to marry his bride. He also describes the birds have come out to sing, and the voice of the turtle dove can be heard in the land. I'm not saying birds can't or don't sing in the wintertime, but it's like this picture of spring, flowers, and the rain is gone, the sun is up and shining, and the birds are singing, and it's springtime. What a beautiful place and time for a wedding. Okay, that's the picture she's describing. Furthermore, to help further enhance our understanding of it's a springtime wedding, he says the fig tree has put forth her green figs, which are likely, as commentators look at this, small edible buds that appear in the March time frame on our calendar in Israel, right? So the fig tree has put forth these small little, but they're edible, little buds that would appear about March time frame. So the whole description here seems to be about this springtime wedding. The vines, the grapevines, have also produced tender grapes. They're starting their journey towards maturity here in the new season, so it sounds like it's springtime. So the king then suggests that his bride smell the springtime air and now understand that it's time for the wedding. The wedding day is fully come. Now, what did he tell her in advance? When spring comes, it'll be wedding time? Probably not. But he's saying, I want to marry you in the springtime, and it's a beautiful occasion with all the flowers and the birds and the smells and the tender little grapes that we might be able to eat. It's all just a beautiful setting for our wedding day. So he then makes his final plea, as if she needs to be convinced all that much, but he makes his final plea for his bride then to come with him. And he does it by complimenting her and his desire for her. So she is like a dove in the clefts of the rock, like a secret place that to her feels safe and secure. As she's in her parents' house, sleeping in her comfortable bed. He doesn't know that she's been longing, desiring for him to come with the passion that she described to her friends a little bit earlier. And so she's in this, comfortable, secret kind of place in her parents' house. And he comes to her and says, but I want you to come with me. Leave your father and mother and be joined to me in marriage. And so he's calling her like a dove hidden in the clefts of the rock for safety and protection. Come out. I've got something else planned for us. So, and by doing so, I know he's standing by her bed in this description, but he asks her to let him see her lovely face and to stop hiding, hide no longer from me. Not that she had been hiding. It's just a poetic picture that he's ready to see her. And I think that's kind of that sense of we get to see each other on our wedding day. And that, again, that same sense of they were separated, there's this betrothal period, and he's waiting for his bride to come, and now it's time so we can see each other for the first time, I think, in months or whatever. But he also wants her to speak because he desires to hear her sweet voice. It's not just her beauty, it's her voice. It's everything about her he loves, and he compliments and praises her for who she is. So, all that sounds like a very strong description of the actual events of him coming to get her on her wedding day, or maybe in the middle of the night, but her wedding day. Where the king does in fact come, or the husband, the groom does in fact come for the bride in the traditional fashion, as I've already described. Now the verses that will follow up to chapter 3, verse 5, seem to me to indicate that this may have all been a vivid dream or in anticipation of the real event to come. And hey, the dream may have become a near perfect reality. He may have done these very things that she was anticipating him to do. But I think what we see following seems to indicate we're still traversing in the poetry and the fantasy and the dialogue that is happening here. Okay. All right, now this comes out of nowhere that I'm how, but I'll just convey to you what the commentators, and if you have a Bible with section headings and whatnot, probably affirms the same. Chapter 2, verse 15 seems to be the Shulamites' brothers who are speaking. We haven't seen or heard from them so far in the story, and we won't hear from them again, really. But they seem to be now the ones speaking over the situation. Okay. So, remember, Solomon is describing her as like this dove in a cleft of the rock, hidden and protected and safe. So the brothers are there to protect their sister from these little foxes who are described as being destructive to their valuable crops. So no, crop farmer wants to see foxes out there in the field destroying their crops. And so they're just, describing their desire to protect their sister from any little fox that would come in and destroy her happiness and destroy the good things that they want for her as their brothers. Okay. They greatly value their sister. Man, she's got great friends and great brothers, by the way. They greatly value their sister and only want her to be with a good man. They don't want her to be with some destructive fox. Yeah, anybody could come and claim that he's going to be good to her and marry her, but they want to protect her from anyone who would be not the choice that they would approve of. And so they're calling everybody else who could be a possible suitor for their sister to be a little fox who's destructive. The Shulamite, though, then returns, and speaking of verse 16, assures her brothers that King Solomon, yes, he's a good man, and that she desires to accept him as her husband. Right? So he's not a little fox. He's a good man, and I have everything within me wants to be his husband. So she's setting their protective tendencies aside and saying, no, he's the one that really is good for me. Her beloved king is hers, she says, and she is his. They've already been committed to each other, and nothing will tear them apart. Their marriage is imminent, and she will not be moved from her desire to be her wife, despite anything her brothers might try to speak contrary to that. And to reinforce this idea, she describes the king as a good man who shepherds his flock among the lilies. He, her husband, her future husband, will care for her and provide for her, and she is confident in his devoted love for her. So she's speaking quite protectively of her husband-to-be from her brothers who think all men or everybody who wants our sister is just an undesirable, and we have to protect her from all of these men. And so she says, no, I found the good one. He's a good shepherd, and he will provide well for me, and I desire to be with him. He desires to be with me, and that settles the issue. The Shulamite, in verse 17 of chapter 2, then speaks to her beloved, or at least wishes for their courtship period to conclude so that they can get to the wedding day. So again, that brings me back to, I don't think what we looked at a few moments ago was descriptive of the real king coming on the wedding day. It was a fantasy. And so now she's speaking about the king will come for me on the appointed day, and he will make me his bride. But until the day breaks, meaning the day that their wedding will happen on, she is waiting for her bridegroom, but waiting is not easy to do. Okay, so she wants him to come. The day isn't here just yet, and it's not easy, but she will, and in fact, wait for him until he comes to get her. When that true wedding day arrives, the shadows of doubt and anticipation will all flee away. All this, am I good enough? Is he looking at other virgins? And all of the doubts that she's been feeling, and even the doubts of her brothers that have been, we just looked at a couple of verses ago. All of that will evaporate away, and she will just, everything that she desires will come true on her wedding day. I mean, that's a lot of expectations, putting the paperclip chain together or whatever, and, getting one off. She cannot hardly wait to get to the wedding. She's waiting and greatly desiring for it to finally get here. So, in her anticipation, she calls out to her beloved to turn to her and make her his wife, right? I mean, she knows he's coming, but her, again, this love that's been stirred up a little too early for her, she's calling out, come get me, come get me, come get me, make me your bride. So she solicits him to be like a gazelle or like a young stag who will conquer the mountains of Bether, which we're going to go back and say that no one knows what the mountains of Bether are. They don't seem to be identifiable of any place in Israel. But the word itself in Hebrew means a cleft between two different mountains, meaning it's probably a reference to her breasts. She wants her to come conquer the cleft between her breasts. She wants him to be the one who conquers her. No one else should see or touch or be exposed to her breasts. She wants her lover to come and conquer her physically, if you will. So the Shulamite has now, as we close out this section, and waiting for the wedding day to come, she now has a troubled dream concerning losing the affections of her beloved before he comes to take her as a bride, which again, to me, says everything we've seen in chapter 1 and chapter 2 is anticipatory, more of a envisioning or a fantasy or whatever about what will happen, not a description of what happened yet, although it could be spot on in terms of what it actually was. Okay, so while she was dreaming at night, she longed to be with the one she loved. Is it any surprise that this is what she's dreaming of? I long to be with the one I love, and yet he's not here with me. So in her dream, she sought him, but could not find him, which is troubling. She then dreams of going into the city streets and into the city square to locate him. Where is my beloved? I long for my beloved. I want to be with him. He's not here. Let me go find him. This is not what the bride would do. She's waiting for him to come get her. But in the dream, she's taking the initiative to go find her beloved. But she still can't seem to find him as she goes all the way into the city. So now she's frantically searching for her beloved, and the watchmen of the city come out. It seems to be in the middle of the night. Watchmen of the city come out. Hey, Shulamite, what are you doing here? This does not seem like a place you should be in the middle of the night. And so they come out to see why she's out there searching around the city. But we don't hear what they say to her. We simply see her speaking to them. And she asked them if they could guide her to her beloved, to the king. And then she found him in the dream. She finds him. And once she finds him, she holds on to him and refuses to ever let him go. Okay? Makes sense. She's been longing with this anticipation and this desire to get to her husband. Once she finds him, she's unwilling to let him go. So this doesn't seem to comport with what I would expect in the traditional wedding event for an Israelite. She led him back to her family home, her father's home, her mother's home, and into the chambers of her mother, the one who conceived her. So she's like picturing her, well, my parents, that's where they are married and that's where they have their relationship intimately. I'm going to take you back to that place. I can't take you to a place I don't have any, connection to, like where you live. So she takes him in her brain, in her dream. She takes him back to her parents' bedroom and says, "Hey, let's lay together here in my house, in my parents' room." So, of course, in the dream, she seems fully ready to consummate their marriage and perhaps even to conceive a child. She talks about, that's where I was conceived. Let's go lay down and let's do what we do and maybe even conceive a child tonight, right? This is all in her dream. And in doing so, having a child with her husband, she believes will help secure her position as his wife. Okay? She's saying once I have him and I give him a child, we won't have this Sarah and Hagar problem of I'm barren, so I can't give you a child. And so she's like, if I can get him into that bed and I can get a child by him, all of my worries will be over. That's what her dream, her mind is telling her in her dream. Now, however, she awakens and begins to process these emotions that were stirred up in the dream of longing intensely for her beloved to come and take her as wife. Now she turns back to her friends, and offers them again courtship advice for them to follow. My guess is they're all virgins. They're all not currently betrothed to a husband, these friends that are helping her. And she's like, guys, don't make the same mistake that I've been making for the last X number of weeks or months or whatever. Don't let this happen to you. And so she, again, uses some poetry here that'll help to make the description for her friends to hear. She says, gazelles and does of the field are not frustrated by extended courtships like human beings. If a gazelle or a doe have the feeling, they just take care of it. I have to wait for my beloved to finally come and take me to his house and to marry him. We're not does. We're not gazelles. Stop acting like one, right? So she's like, don't let it grow because you can't act like them and just go satisfy your urges because we're not animals. So animals with sexual desires do not observe a waiting period once they find a suitable mate, do they? They simply take care of business the moment that they find their suitable partner. And since humans are not gazelles or does, it is foolish, frustrating, emotionally detrimental to allow your sexual desires to consume your thoughts constantly, never-endingly until your wedding day arrives. Therefore, this Shulamite bride-to-be instructs the daughters of Jerusalem, her good friends, not to stir up or awaken love until it can be satisfied appropriately through marriage. Now this happens to be great advice for all unmarried people to heed. It's fine to say, I found the one I want to ask to marry me, or the one I desired to say yes to has asked me to marry them. But it's not good to spend all day long going, I can't wait to get in bed with that person. I can't wait. And our culture, says, well, why wait? Just go ahead and do it. Act like a stag. Act like a gazelle. Do whatever you want to do. But biblically, Scripture is trying to convey a message to people in these situations. Don't stir up love. Look at the anguish that this Shulamite has been going through. What should be the greatest day of her life is preceded by a whole lot of stress and worry and doubt about the things happening when she could have just go, I trust my beloved's coming. I'm just going to live my life until he comes. I know that he has got a great wedding plan for us and we will have a great life together. But all of this urging and desire and, oh, he's the most beautiful, handsome man I've ever seen and I just can't wait to be with him and all is going on there. She's like, don't do that to yourself. Right? And so if you're a parent, grandparent, or in a situation, speaking to people online, I don't think anybody in the room, in a situation where you are preparing to be married, look at what the Shulamite says here twice in chapter 2 and chapter 3. Don't stir up or awaken the passions of love until the season is upon you to be married. Right? So, lesson learned from there. But we should bring strong admiration for the couple that is presented here, Solomon the king, the Shulamite bride. They seem to have done it properly, morally upstanding in their conduct. They didn't come together. They did not engage in intimacy until the wedding day. So even though it was a struggle, even though there was passions that were stirring up, they made it to the wedding day without violating the basic tenets of stay sexually pure until marriage. And so we should commend them from that, and hopefully all of us learn something from that or apply it to those who might be able to learn from us because of our advanced wisdom, having gone through certain things ourselves before. Any thoughts or questions on this study tonight? A little bit of time, a little bit early again. Somehow the 4 pages I typically plan for didn't take that long, so or take the full 90 minutes. So, all right, have a good evening. So glad you all came. Be blessed.